We're going to continue our player breakdown series by talking about three outfielders today and where they all fit into the outfield puzzle going forward. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Tuesday, October 29th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Welcome in, everyone. Hope everyone's Monday was fantastic. As we said in the cold open there, we are going to talk about three outfielders today. We're going to talk Wenceel Perez, Justyn-Henry Malloy, and then Superman himself, Parker Meadows. I think I want to try to keep positional groups together as much as possible. Obviously, there's just going to be more pitchers inherently, and especially like relievers than anything else. So we've been throwing in some relievers with some other groups and whatnot, but I think these three being grouped together, you have three very unique and different outlooks heading into 2025. You have a guy who is going to be guaranteed the starting center fielder and may even be the starting leadoff hitter on opening day, no matter who's on the mound going into 2025. You have another guy who could be a fourth outfielder, maybe going in on opening day, at least in 2025. And then another guy who, best case scenario, is probably a bench bat on opening day. And odds are looking decent. Like he might not even make the roster on opening day next year. So it's three very different places in a crowded outfield. And so I want to keep the outfielders together as much as possible because there is so much conversation surrounding said outfield. So let's start off with Wenceel Perez, who hit 242, had a 300 on base percentage, a 383 slug. That's a 683 OPS, 9 homers, 37 RBIs, 9 stolen bases, had a 1.1 F WAR in 112 games, 7.5% walk rate, 21.5% K rate. Some other numbers I could throw at you. We'll get into those a little bit later, I'd imagine. So Wenceel Perez rocks, and I think the reason why he rocks so much on the field is because this was a dude that no one expected to be a plus contributor at the MLB level this season. There were plenty of people that liked Wenceel Perez in the long run. I mean, on this show last September, we talked, well, I should say September 2023, we talked about how if Wenceel Perez doesn't get hurt, he probably is the September call-up last year instead of Andre Lipsius, right? So, this was a guy that exceeded all expectations that were put on him by the organization and by the fan base this year. He was over a one-win player, which is, again, something that nobody really pinned him as, at least in the 2024 season going into the year. I think the biggest thing on the field, and we'll get to the offense, obviously, but the biggest thing in the field was that he moved from an infielder to an outfielder this year. And that's something that all of our fantastic beat writers and a lot of the media covered in spring training in 2024 was like, this dude is trying out a new position. He's moving to the corner outfield. He played some corner outfield last year, but he was predominantly an infielder for all of his professional career so far. And he was a plus defender out there. So I give him a ton of credit. He was a +4 OAA in right field, and he was a +1 DRS in both left and right field each individually. So was a solid defender out there. Was it always pretty? No, but he's athletic. He has decent range, and he was a albeit barely, but a plus defender in the corners and showed off actually some pretty decent range out there. So I give him a ton of credit for that. He also was a well above average runner in the base paths, which is always nice to have in the back pocket and always adds to players' value a little bit offensively. So this is kind of the meat and potatoes of this conversation. I think, and this is something I repeated a lot during the regular season and even during the postseason, was that my favorite thing about Wenceel Perez at bats is that they are just professional ABs, right? He's not going to blow you away in any specific category, but he was around league average in K rate, walk rate, chase rate, squared up percentage, just the amount of time you square up the baseball. He was 70th percentile in whiff rate, so top 30% in the league in fewest amount of swing and miss. Like he's just going to give you a solid at bat, and the thing is, he's going to give you a solid at bat in every situation you can imagine. He had a 269 average and an 839 OPS with runners in scoring position, and in the ninth inning, no matter what the situation, just his numbers in the ninth inning this year, he hit 300 with a 949 OPS in the ninth inning in the 2024 season. So Wenceel Perez is never going to be an elite hitter. I don't think this is ever going to be a guy that is going to put up, like 850 plus OPS type of seasons. He may never even get to like 800 OPS type of, seasons. But he can put the bat on the ball against every pitch and in any situation. He doesn't have terrible numbers against any type of pitch he saw this year, which I think is so fascinating. Now, he didn't have a pitch that he had really good numbers against either, right? They were just all middle of the road. He was average against every pitch he saw with like remote frequency, like that has a decent sample size. Like I don't think he got a hit on like a sweeper, but he saw like 4 of them, or a slurve, not a sweeper. He saw plenty of sweepers. Slurves are being phased out of baseball. I think he only saw 3 or 4 of them. I don't know if he got a hit on any of them, but like, you know what I mean? Like he's just legitimately is an around league average hitter that's not going to swing and miss a lot. And I think why he does, I think all of that I just laid out there, all of those numbers are why he does so well in big spots, and also why AJ loved using him this season. He wasn't going to rake, but you were going to get a solid at bat no matter what the pitcher was offering and no matter what he had in his arsenal on the mound. So is it an elite profile? No. I think a 1 to 2 win player is probably the ceiling. It's probably like a 2-ish WAR player. But I can remember on this show, it is documented somewhere. On this show, I remember like whining one episode, probably like 2 years ago now, begging for 2-win players. I remember that. I remember coming on here and talking to all of y'all and going, I am just begging for this organization to develop and produce 1.5 to 2.5 WAR players. And I think that's what Wenceel Perez can be over a full season. There is value here. There's 2 areas specifically that I think are realistic for him to improve on. And I think that if he does improve on either or both of them, they could raise his value a lot. One is if he can be a serviceable defender in the infield again. I'm not asking him to be, a Gold Glover at shortstop. He'll probably will never play shortstop ever again. But if he can be serviceable, right? Even if it's slightly negative defense, if he can be serviceable at third and or second and or first, plus bringing the defense he does in corner outfield, that would raise his value immensely. And I think that would almost guarantee him a roster spot going into next season. Whereas right now, I think it's kind of the opposite. It's just a really crowded outfield at full health. I also think that improving his numbers against left-handed pitching is going to be a huge ask for him. This is a switch hitter that hit 209 with a 594 OPS against lefties. That's just not good enough for a guy that's a switch hitter, right? You might as well just be a lefty. So those are 2 things that I think the organization and, a lot of the fan base and myself really want to see him improve on. He doesn't hit the ball very hard. He's not really great at anything. And he's a switch hitter that didn't hit one-handedness very well. He's a corner outfielder in an organization that is full of corner outfielders, drowning in them. But I'll be darned if he wasn't a key part of this team in 2024. And despite all of the I don't want to call them flaws, but like maybe shortcomings that he has on the field that I just laid out, he played in 112 games in the deepest position the organization has. I tell you all the time, right? One of my favorite quotes on here and on the Red Wings show, organizations will tell you how they feel about a player if you just listen to them. And I think the Tigers are very fond of Wenceel Perez for a very good reason. There's some value in this player. And we'll talk about maybe his role on the team and what we can expect out of him in 2025 later on. Let's talk about Justyn-Henry Malloy, the rookie, as well this season that had a pretty, it was a roller coaster of a debut. We'll talk about that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same place where you place all of your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shots to everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back tomorrow, presumably with more player breakdowns. But if any news comes out of Tigers land, then obviously we will discuss that as well. Let's talk about JHM here. Justyn-Henry Malloy hit 203 with a 291 OBP, a 366 slug. That is a 657 OPS. Had a 10% walk rate, a 37% K rate, and was worth negative 0.5 Fangraphs WAR, so negative half a win. By the end of the year, Malloy was a specialist for the Tigers. Pretty plain and simple. I'm not going to pretend like he was anything that he wasn't on the field. He was a specialist to an extreme with AJ Hinch's usage of him, right? I love this dude. I think he is one of the nicest and just most professional guys that have come through the Tigers system in a while. He seems like an absolutely awesome dude, and he's only 24 years old. So he still has plenty of time to improve and carve out a role for himself on this team going forward. But by the end of 2024, he really just did one thing well, and that was crush lefty pitching. He hit 250 with an 893 OPS and an on-base percentage of dang near 400 against lefties in the regular season in 2024. What he did best against lefties, the reason why he had so much success against them, was he crushed fastballs. If you were a left-handed pitcher and you threw him a heater, it was almost certainly getting smacked around the yard. That is the pitch that he did comfortably the most damage on. You could even make an argument it was all of the damage that he did against lefties was on fastballs. He didn't really hit particularly well against any other pitch versus lefties. Now, he drew a lot of walks and worked a lot of counts and didn't chase and didn't, expand the zone a lot of times against lefties. But his batted ball data, the balls that he did put in play, not, ultimately super fantastic outside of the heater. And then against right-handed pitching, had a 188 average and a 579 OPS. So well below average. Pretty much, again, by the end of the season, unplayable against righties. Those are not very good numbers, obviously. He's a well below average runner, pretty toward the bottom in sprint speed, doesn't grade out super well on the base paths, and he struggles mightily defensively. And that has been something that has been a conversation that has been surrounding Malloy since he was acquired from Atlanta, to be honest. Nonetheless, throughout his Mud Hens career, he had a -4 outs above average in a really small sample size and had negative DRS in the corner outfield positions as well. And again, it was not a very big sample size. He didn't play the field too terribly much to acquire that much, negative in those stats. And with all of that I just laid out, you pretty quickly realize why the WAR is negative, right? Minus defense, minus base running, and minus hitting overall. Right. I mean, I started off the segment by reading his season numbers. He barely hit 200 if you combine righties and lefties. Now, the elite chase rate that was talked about since they acquired him from Atlanta as well, and that I was really excited about, and that everybody that covered this team was really pumped about, did translate to MLB, which is great to see. And the walk rate was pretty good. I think that ideally you'd like it to be a little bit higher. And the reason why is because a 10% walk rate, while not bad, probably doesn't justify a whiff rate of almost 40% and a K rate of almost 40%. He struck out so much and he swung and missed so much. That K rate was literally one of the highest in the entire game of baseball if he was a qualified hitter. So, AJ Hinch is really good at his job, and so Malloy was only put in situations where he was going to be a positive asset for this team down the stretch in the playoffs. That's why he was a DH that only took ABs when a lefty was on the mound. That is, eliminating pretty much all of the negative on the field that we saw from him in this year, and putting him in situations to succeed, gain some confidence, and ultimately get better. But there's still a lot of work to do for Malloy to become an everyday major league player in this organization. To be a player that, how do I word this? Like, if you want to be a player, I guess want to be isn't right. I'm sure he wants to be really good at everything, just like all of these guys, I would hope. But if you are going to be a player that doesn't really provide any value outside of the batter's box during a game, right? If you're not going to provide value on the base pass, if you're not going to provide value with your range, if you're not going to provide value with your arm or your glove, et cetera, you have to be a really darn good hitter to be a valuable asset. This is a very similar conversation that we had with Torkelson last year when we did our breakdown of Torque, right? Like he was barely a positive win player, and throughout his career, he's been mostly a negative WAR player, because he's been a minus defender, a minus runner, and hasn't hit very well. And even last year when he did hit, 2023, when he did hit decently well, he was still like around net zero. And some people find that's just like frustration with the stat of WAR. And if you don't like WAR, then you can take what I'm saying as just parts of the game to improve on, rather than, a strictly like assigning a value number to a player per se. But I think that all in all, like, take WAR out of it. Let's just do like the 5-tool athlete type of game, right? Right now, it's like half a tool, and that's hitting for power and drawing walks against lefties. So I think that there is still a lot of room to grow here, but all of that being said, there is still a profile here that I think can be a positive asset on a major league team. This wasn't meant to be like he'll never, become anything, and like he was negative this year, so he's just going to be that forever. Like I said at the beginning, he's a young player that sees the zone really well and makes really good decisions on what to swing at and what not to swing at. That is good. That is hard to teach. So him inherently having that is a great step in the right direction, is a great sign for him down the road. I think that a lot of that's just going to come with reps and just getting the timing down a little bit better. But I think that there is still a solid player in there. It's just a matter of whether he's going to get that opportunity immediately in 2025. And we'll talk about that at the end of the show here. Let's talk about Superman. All right, Parker Meadows. We'll do that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money on sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to everyone. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long with PrizePicks. They have so many great offers over at PrizePicks, and they put their members first. Withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. And when my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. They also have so many great celebrities. And there's a community tab that you can press, and you can just see what all the biggest names are playing that day. Drewski, Joe Budden, Sean O'Malley, right? Like there's a ton of big names over in the PrizePicks community. So sign up today and download the app and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every day. So let's talk about Parker Meadows. He is Superman. He is the love of my life, and I adore him. Hit 244 with a 310 OBP and a 433 slug. That is a 743 OPS. He had 9 home runs, 28 RBIs, an 8.4% walk rate, a 25.5% K rate, and was worth over 2 wins, 2.1 FWAR in just 82 games. It's unbelievable how his numbers ended up being as good as they were, considering how slowly he stood and how bad he was just straight up to start off the season. Right, you're talking about a guy that hit so well down the stretch that he ended up having a final stat line that was above league average in the eyes of OPS and WRC plus, despite the fact that he hit like 100 basically for the first month and a half of his season. That is unbelievable. And you can't really do like the prorate game with WAR. There's a lot of factors that go into it. It's very hard to just be like, oh, well, like he played this many games and had this much WAR, so over 162, he'd get this WAR. That's a dangerous game and a slippery slope, but just for fun, let's just ignore what I just said and do it with Parker. He would be at about a 4-win season over 162, and that was with him being terrible at the plate for like a third of the games he played this year, included into those numbers. This guy could legitimately be incredible. And when we talk about his season numbers, it almost, again, isn't fair because he was a straight up different player after he got called back up. Pre-send down, he hit 131 with a 533 OPS. Post call up, he hit 296 with an 840 OPS and had an 805 OPS on the season with runners in scoring position. I think the thing that I liked the most, aside from just the fact that he became an everyday player by the end of the season, was that the conversation around him being a platoon player really dropped off at the end of the season. And this was a big ask from him when he was in AAA, not this year, last year, before he made his major league debut last season. The reason why it took so long to get him called up, according to the front office, was because they wanted him to improve against lefties. This year, he had a 746 OPS against right-handed pitching and a 732 against lefties, with a higher batting average against lefties than against righties. So even aside from just the results and the numbers that I've just been kind of spewing, right, and I'm just kind of throwing a bunch of numbers and whatnot at you, this guy swung and missed and struck out significantly less after being called up. He was viewed as like maybe a high swing and miss, a high K rate guy, but he was going to draw walks. He got back on track to being a low chase rate guy that was going to draw a lot of walks, but also cut the swing and miss and the strikeouts. He is such a weapon at the top of the lineup. And then obviously this conversation comes with everything else he does that is so valuable to this team as well. He was an elite base runner. He was in the 93rd percentile in sprint speed, which topped, and his top sprint speed was amongst the best in all of baseball. And then in center field, again, in only half a season sample size, was a +5 defensive run saved and a +7 outs above average. He was also a plus arm. His arm graded out well above league average as well. This profile is nuts, like legitimately. And this is why everybody, and myself included, have been so excited about this dude for the better part of 2 years. He has power. He draws walks. He can hit both-handedness pitchers despite being a lefty. He has elite speed. He plays elite defense. That profile I just laid out to you is a really, really, really good baseball player. And I think that he proved that he is the center fielder of the future of the Detroit Tigers. 2025. Let's talk about all three of these guys and kind of their outlooks going into the year. Because as I said at the beginning of the show, I think they're in three very different places. Wenceel Perez will be in the mix for a spot on opening day. But I think that it's also far from guaranteed. I fully expect him to get MLB at bats next year. Even if he doesn't make the team out of camp, he'll be one of the first call-ups and somebody will get hurt and he'll have to, I fully expect him to get, honestly, a lot of at-bats next year. But I really think they should try to work him in the infield this winter just to see. And like, if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. And if he comes into spring training and he can't play defense in the infield, then you move him back to corner outfield and who's the wiser, right? Who cares? But his value would skyrocket if he could play, outside of shortstop. He's never going to play shortstop. If he could just play some second and first or some third and first or all three even, his value would just get so much higher for this team. And, we'll see. Like, corner outfield is really crowded and they need someone out there that can hit left-handed pitching. And Wenceel Perez did not do that last season. That transitions us into Justyn-Henry Malloy, who can hit left-handed pitching and does play corner outfield. The conversation with Malloy, I think, is rather similar to the conversation we had on yesterday's show with Alex Lang. Where, like, this team desperately needs his profile. They desperately need a big right-handed power bat that can play corner outfield and crush left-handed pitching. At Malloy's best, that is him. But he just hasn't shown enough yet, and this is the big difference between him and Lang, right? I wasn't trying to compare them one for one, but like, Lang has been in the majors for parts of 4 seasons. Malloy was a rookie this year. He has plenty of time to continue improving, and I want to make that very clear. But he has not shown enough yet to invoke like the ultimate confidence for the organization to not go after a righty power bat that can play the outfield this winter. Right? I don't think too much of the fan base is like, you know what? Don't sign a righty free agent bat because we have Justyn-Henry Malloy. He has plenty of MLB options left in his contract. He will almost certainly be around at some point next season. I can almost promise you. But as it stands right now, and this is on October 29th, okay? We have so much time until opening day. This is obviously subject to change. But from where we sit right now, I really don't expect him to make the team out of camp going into 2025. And I expect the Tigers to add an asset to kind of fill that role that he would be filling in, or that he did fill in this past year, going forward and on opening day next year. Parker Meadows, pretty easy conversation. I just can't wait for a full season. This is more of just like excitement than anything else. You're a full season of stolen bases, a full season of his defense, a full season of the new batting, right? The second half offense. I just want him. All I want in 2025, I have confidence that he's going to be really, really good. But all I want is for him to prove that he can be the leadoff hitter every single day. Doesn't matter who's on the bump, righty, lefty, what the situation is. This dude's value at the top of the lineup is disgustingly good. That much speed, the ability to hit a leadoff homer, a good walk drawer, and hit righties and lefties pretty much the same. Like, having that at the top of your lineup is unthinkable value. And so I want him to become a true everyday center fielder, leadoff hitter for this team in 2025. And if he does that, you're talking about a guy that could, win anywhere as far as WAR goes, be anywhere from like a 4 to, I can't even believe I'm saying this given where we were like 2 years ago with Parker Meadows, but like, I genuinely think the ceiling is like a 5 to 6 win player. The ceiling, not a guarantee that that's going to happen, but I think if everything clicks and goes right, that is absolutely on the table. Outfield's going to be weird, man. There's a lot of conversation surrounding the outfield for this team going into what should be a really, really exciting an intriguing offseason. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to that everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back tomorrow. Appreciate you all greatly. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.